Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just a quick reminder, I do stream this over at twitch.tv/Zenitsu, and this is also uploaded as a YouTube video under the YouTube channel of Zenitsu, on top of being hosted on various different podcasting sources for your listening pleasure. Today, I'm with my co-host Teddy, and we're going to be talking about the concept of waterfall rotation. So, unfortunately, with this being the dry spell, we don't really have any competitive developments because there is no competitive events to have anything develop. So, we're just going to skip that portion today because, we're just in that dry spell. And Ultimate Cups are starting in a week or two?
A week, yes.
Okay. So Ultimate Cups will be coming soon, and then we're going to be in Ultimate Cups for a while, and I think October is when regionals pick up again, and
Yes, sir.
September is when we're getting the reprint set, and that's, I guess, already pretty divided. So I guess we could kind of talk a little bit about that as well, because that is the newest thing that's coming up with a total of 4 new decks and a slew of reprints that some people really like and some people really hate.
I think I understand. I understand why. One, it's very late. So if this maybe had come when it was supposed to, then maybe it wouldn't be so controversial. But I also think just the nature of reprints itself would be controversial because some of these cards, like I understand, a lot of them are not useful. There's a lot of cards that are really not good in the meta, but there are like some like generic staple cards like that some like especially the memory fixers, those memory tamers are all usually very good. Like Magna Angemon, like there's a bunch of cards that are just flat out like not like they might be good. No, they are objectively just good cards. Um,
And
that
we're also getting the memory boosts and some expensive promos reprinted. I mean, like, I looked at the value of each of the cards individually as far as like the ones that I would think or know are/were expensive. And like when I'm looking at these cards and I'm saying, "Oh my god, the most expensive card that's getting reprint, the current market value is only $14." Like, to some people that's actually a lot, but I get, like, in the grand scheme of things of a TCG, like, the most expensive card getting reprinted is only $14 is like,
it's really not that bad.
yeah, it's like, where's the value? Where's the drive, the demand, the want, the need? And like, this is kind of where I was originally against this pushback. I was just like, no. The idea of the reprints were in something later. We literally didn't give them time to explain themselves before we went up in arms and had them walk back this decision. I'm not like against the walk back. It's just I would have liked to know the full scope of the plan so I could evaluate which version I would have wanted as a consumer. But I guess we spoke up too quickly, and now there is no choice in that matter. I do think, like, maybe if they just had the reprints in initially and then they put it in on time, which was supposed to be before BT 13.
Yes. We were
Um,
supposed to get it 3 weeks before.
yeah, because like it's mostly reprints, and the new decks, which are based off of Ghost Games and then Manzimon, don't really mean a whole lot. Um, like
They're
they're
just
they're
cool.
not that great. The Jellymon and Gamamon are the only two that have seen any like real big competitive success, and they haven't even seen that big of competitive success. It's just compared to the others, they actually seen some. Uh,
Galamon's not been doing too bad
no,
over
but
in the
that's because
West.
he got new. That's because his new ace card.
Oh, yeah, the new Ace and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's in the LM set, which we have no idea how we're going to be getting eventually. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
can't
but
stand it.
yeah, but as far as like the reprint set as a whole, like, I think depending on how the pull rates, it's going to be either a really bad set because the pull rates are going to be astronomically horrible because of all of the fluff and filler that is in it. And that's what Japan hated about theirs, is the fact that all of these reprints were for the most part fluff and filler even when they got them on time. But Japan has a different level of accessibility when it comes to their cards than we do ours. And for certain territories, this is like a godsend just to be able to get some of these cards back into their market. So it's not even just like from an American market or a US market standpoint. These cards actually could be meaningful. But I personally would have preferred the split product idea, so that way I could just focus all my attention on just the new cards, get those as easily as I possibly can, and now those prices are probably going to be higher than if they were in the separate product, just because they're going to be harder to get because of all of the reprints. But that's where singles come in handy, and I'm just going to almost entirely skip the set. I think I'm going to buy one box just to open it and see how bad it is, and then singles out the rest.
I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was in JP because even though we are getting the reprints in that, a lot of the stuff got removed from the boxes. Like, we're really just getting the reprints and then the new cards. There isn't like anything extra. We're not getting the alt-art mem boosts in the set. We saw where we're getting those, and that's awful, by the way, how they're distributing those. Very, very awful.
Oh, in like the adventure box or whatever that
And
they
you only
have?
get one in an adventure box. So for you to get a playset, you would need to get what, 4, 8, 12, 16? You have to get 16 adventure boxes just to get a playset of each of the art of the mem boosts.
Yeah, that's if you're
which is
hunting it out
absurd.
and doing it all yourself and
No,
you're not
more.
buying
20.
singles.
Right? There's how many mem boosts?
There's one of each
green.
color, so there's 6.
Eight.
So 6 times
There's
4,
no white,
it's
right?
24.
Is it?
Yes.
Red, green, black, purple,
There's 6 of them.
blue. What's the fixed color?
Red.
Yeah, red, green, black, purple, blue.
Yellow.
Oh, yellow. Yeah, okay, 6. I was like, what? I was like, what? I was like, am I crazy? Yeah. But
Yeah.
even then, so then it's even worse. So you'd have to literally get an unholy amount of those boxes, which will have zero value, by the way. Literally just the mem boost, and then everything in that box is useless. So it's like you're just getting.
Well, you also get like a little
awful.
tchotchke, which I wouldn't mind having, but I'm not going to be buying.
Not 24 of them. You don't need 24.
I'm not going to be buying 24 of them. I'll just buy the one.
Like,
I also don't know if the memory boost is going to be the face card, so we know which memory boost we're getting, so that way people can hunt them down, or if they are just going to be in the random pack. If they're like a random sealed pack that you can't see, that would
that's
also
even worse.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the smart
from the
decision
look of
on
it.
Bandai.
From the look of it, it looks like it's just.
Yeah, but
It's
that's
like
just
a
product,
sealed thing.
Yeah, that's
That's
just
what
a
I'm
product
saying.
render though. Like those
Exactly.
aren't always accurate.
That's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't mean that. I hope that it is just out like that. The only thing bad of it being out like that is that they'll probably not be in the best condition unless they're treated very well. Which sucks. That's like the biggest thing I don't like about it, but other than that, I mean, I think the set will be fine. I don't know. It should be fun at most. You're not really looking at these side sets anyway for competitive viability. You're just looking to fluff out decks or see random fun archetypes. Like the Gavamon deck is actually not bad. Like even like the deck itself, it didn't do that bad over every other deck didn't do that great. But the Gavamon deck actually has some merit. It just is still slower than most of the other stuff, but that is just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, the only new cards that we're getting in this set, because Japan had them distributed differently, are a couple of promo cards. So the alternative level 6s, like they're the same name as the ones that are going to be in the set, but like they're the promo side or support level 6s. Those are actually going to be inside of the set. That's how we're going to be getting those cards. Because when I was initially like looking at it, like the set, I was just like, do we even get these promos? And then I learned that they actually do come inside of the English version of the set. That's nice.
Yeah.
So
at least to consolidate it all into
yeah.
one area.
And yeah, but
But I,
set
hmm,
aside, the reprints also means that the set or block icon is going to be changing for some of the cards. Or not really changing, um, more so just
update.
it's an update. So there has been an event announced. It's a very small event, not like it might be just a test type of event, but it is a Bandai event where they are doing basically a block format. So cards with the block icon of 2 and 3 are legal, which means anything without the 2 and the 3 are not legal. But this is where like reprints get kind of muddy on that, because now you have to see what cards have that versus what cards don't have that. And they've reprinted so many things in alt arts, then some of the arts might be in that block but not have the block icon that's correct with it. There's just a whole bunch of mess around that, and then the way sets are designed is with the block structure in mind to a degree, where it's just like, okay, most of like Shine Greymon is going to be a block 2 deck. Like all of his parts and pieces that are good are exclusively part block 2. So you don't need anything from block 1 in order to play Shine Greymon, just as an example. So like, is that type of a format really going to be changing the meta at all? Probably not. It just means that
No.
like, okay, you can't use BT2 Shine, but only
Wow.
select people use BT2 Shine. I think like maybe you can't use the memory boosts. Actually no, now wait, would they have the this is where reprints are getting super confusing. It's just like I don't like
I
it.
don't know if they're gonna have the block. I don't think they're gonna have the block two thing. Could be wrong though.
They might not, but they might also. Like I I'd have to look at all the different arts, and like it just it's not that the game isn't built to really support the idea as much as we think it is, because of how often Bandai reprints cards, which is why our secondary market is in the current state that it is, which is like, okay, it might suck for collectors and investors on people trying to make money off of the game, but that's not the goal of the game, is to make money. Like I went absolutely mad trying to play the Magic Finance game, and just trying to keep up with it was melting my brain on how hard it was and how much I really didn't want to do that. But in order to try to get ahead as a Magic player, that's kind of what you almost had to do at times. It's like I had to figure out when the dips are, when the spikes were, and try to like predict based on sets and support, and it was an absolute nightmare. And Digimon just makes it so much easier because I just don't have to actually care, because nothing actually is holding much value outside of good secret rares and alt arts. And like, yes, that might suck for investors, but you shouldn't be investing in a TCG to begin with.
Nah, if you're, this is not the markets really to be investing in. The only one that you might be able to do that is like Pokemon, but like even then, that's like not the best.
Yeah. I mean, Pokemon at this point, Pokemon is the only game that actually has rotation, because they're the only ones still kind of continuing it. Magic actually is slowing down their rotation, because the common complaint that they were having was decks and cards were rotating out too quickly. So it's just like, okay, decks and cards were rotating out too quickly. How do we solve that? We rotate less often. And like, doesn't that defeat the point of rotation?
Essentially, yeah.
So they're slowing down their rotation to have it be less of a factor, and that leaves Pokemon really being the only one that has a more consistent rotation. But like, it goes to show you, every other card game currently does not have rotation.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily conducive. That like sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes a lot of times it really doesn't. So I mean I kind of understand, but like I don't know. I don't I honestly don't care either way. I'm fine if they do it. I just don't see the benefit to having it. But who knows? Maybe it happens and then I like it. But I don't foresee that being the case. But maybe.
This is why I guess I'm gonna coin the term if it's not really coins. Like a lot of these Eternal based games actually do have a rotation. We just can't see it because it's a waterfall rotation. So the way I like to describe waterfall rotation is basically you have the newest, latest, greatest, most powerful thing all the way at the very tippity top. So that's what's
Mhm.
rolling around the waterfall. Then, as things are rolling down the waterfall, that's, you know, the rotation of it. So the last set's latest and greatest now is the second latest and greatest, which makes it the second best type thing to look forward to try to play if you're playing competitively. Like it's still in the competitive spectrum considering it's still on the waterfall. It hasn't crashed and is completely unplayable, but it's not going to be performing as well as it once did when it was at the very top. And then the next set will roll around, and then you could start to see, like, okay, that's kind of how the waterfall rotation works is like what became good slowly becomes not so good. But because of how eternal formats are, you still have access at it. Like that's the cool part is you still have access at it. They could go back, revisit uh, what they want, and update it, and then have it roll back down and have it be good again.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, uh, that's interesting. I don't. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Like, it makes sense completely, actually. Um, I don't know if. I guess that kind of is how it is, because they'll always keep adding more, and then the next thing will pile up, and then it just keeps going and going and going, essentially infinitely, until either something stops it or they say no more and they shut down the game or whatever. Hmm.
But that's the idea of waterfall rotation, and we've seen this happen with Digimon very often, where it's just like, okay, um, we have, let's just say, Beelzemon. Like Beelzemon is the top dog. Granted, Beelzemon did suffer a limitation, but still, Beelzemon was the top dog of BT12. He's still viable and playable in BT13. He's just not the top dog. Part of it was that limitation, but the other part of it is the attention on the new decks. Whether that attention is warranted and whether those decks are actually good or not is to be determined, as we've seen with BT8 versus BT7, where BT7 was still better than BT8 by a country mile. We just wanted to not play BT7 decks
Yeah, I
until
think
we
that's
did.
a. Yeah, that's. I think that's like a separate thing altogether.
That
Because
is, yeah, that definitely is a separate thing on like just analysis, but like waterfall rotation also goes in, like, coincides with our hype about things where it's just like, oh, this is the new hotness, I want to play that new hotness. Whether it's good or not is again to be determined, but I just want to play it because it's new, it's different, it's something I'm going to be relearning, reassessing, and who knows, maybe that is going to be the thing that resonates and sticks with me.
hmm, I get. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, that's at least that's my mindset when it comes to new product like RBO1. I know it's not going to be great, but I'm still going to play it. I'm still going to play Gamamon. I'm still going to play Angoramon and that. Interesting.
But I've seen a lot of talks and confusion recently on the interwebs about, like, is Digimon getting rotation because of this event, and does, like, what is I honestly still don't even understand people's mentality behind rotation. Their number one concern, from what I could just gather, seems to be, oh, it quells power creep. That is a fallacy. That is actual false. It does not quell power creep at all. And I like that's the part that really makes me question, like, why people are begging for rotation. It's just like, okay, yes, cards cycle in and out, but they reprint cards so often, like, now what happens when things are slightly, like, transitioning between the cycles, and like it's a whole slew of mess and can of worms that, like, I'm already having a hard time trying to keep track of like block icons for that one Japanese event, just looking at it, because like the big question was, where's block one? And it's just like, what was in block one? It's just like, well, block one was these sets, and half of those cards were already reprinted for block two. So now you have cards from block one in block two, and then you have cards from block two are already in block three, and then you have cards in block one that are in block three. It's like they reprint things so often, like rotation actually wouldn't even matter even if they implemented it.
Yeah, a large amount of them would just not matter because there's so much reprints that go and just say no. These are now part of block whatever other block, and I think it's just going to be way too confusing for a lot of people because like there will be probably like reprints of cards that don't have the block thing, but they are part of the block format. So like, are you able to use those cards? I assume yes, but
And then, like, let's just say, going back to the TK and tie example, those cards are in block two because they were reprinted for block two, but they were a block zero card. What if I use the block zero version and they don't understand that this card has been reprinted? So now it's bringing, like, how am I supposed to actually check to see and make sure what card is actually legal for that format if I don't have that most up-to-date card? But I do have a version of that card. Like, is my opponent just supposed to take my word for it?
yeah, exactly. Like, do we?
Or do I need to just buy a new card that I don't need and hope it actually has that black icon?
That's so weird. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how anyone could think that it quells power creep. I don't know where that logic or where that logic comes from.
It's,
You mentioned that earlier.
yeah, so a lot of that comes from the fact that, like, oh, we just, like, let's just say blue hybrids as an example. It's just like blue hybrids was part of block one. So it's just like, okay, when block one rotates, now we don't have to worry about blue hybrids anymore. Well, spoiler
Okay, but
alert,
we don't
we
worry about
already
it
don't.
now.
Yeah, we
I
don't
was
worry
like,
about it now. So it's not like a rotation would actually mean anything. And, like, they're not going to do a 1 year rotation where once the year rolls out, everything from, let's just say, block two to block three, like, now you just can't use block two decks. Like, no, they're not going to do that. That you at least need a 2 year time span of cards in the card pool in order for it to work. And we're just now entering our, what, 4th year?
yeah,
And the
just
way,
barely getting in there.
yeah, and the way that our blocks are already designed, decks are integrated inside of the block, but they, like, again, the waterfall approach, they get phased out just because new decks are coming in. Granted, again, there's going to be exceptions where certain decks just aren't that strong. But, like, you look at the current iteration of, let's just say, War Greymon. He's already phased out most of his block 0 and block 1 cards. He's mostly block 2 at this point. Like, what is rotation actually going to do? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. And if it's to bring
Yeah.
him down in power, no, all of his good stuff is in the current block, not the block that's rotating. So, again, like, I don't understand why people think that
It only
rotation
works for
quells
like
power creep.
way later, like later in a game's lifespan, where they
Not
have thousands and thousands of cards, and even then, that probably doesn't even work.
No,
Because
Magic has proven it doesn't work because power creep can be built into rotation cycles. Magic purposefully did this. They purposefully acknowledge, hey, we are upping the power level of standard because we want to. And once you up the power level, you can't go down. Because let's just say, at least this is in Magic's case. I don't know if this is in Pokemon's case either, but at least like from my knowledge of Magic and rotation from Magic, because I used to play that cycle, once
yeah,
you have a set that is more, like, objectively more powerful than the other sets, you're going to be playing that set.
yeah, you just don't even bother moving back. There's no reason to.
No. And in order for you to depower standard or, like, your rotation, you are going to have to take at least a year to 2 years of lost sales trying to print underpowered stuff that can't compete with what you just printed. No company within their right mind is going to say, oh, we made a mistake. This set is too powerful. Let's now make every set in front, like behind it, less powerful. Let's not sell as many things because once people learn that what we're printing is no longer good, and then when rotation happens, now we're forcing people to buy into those because they were lower power, but that's like no company's going to take that hit.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Uh,
Because
I don't
let's
know
just say
how.
with block rotation, let's honestly just say like, oh yes, um, BT13 was too powerful. So now we have to have BT14, which is the start of Block 3, BT15, BT16, and BT17 be less powerful than BT13. That's a whole year worth of sets that they now are going to be losing money on
Yeah, because there's no
because there's
reason.
no reason to buy it if, let's just say, Royal Knights is just the best deck objectively for now until all of them. And same thing with Shine Greymon because that's in the same set.
Yeah, there would be essentially no reason to buy further if you know that these decks are just going to be infinitely better. Um,
Like
hmm.
Bandai still gives you reasons to play some of the older decks. Like we've seen All Force still do good. That was a BT11 deck, and it's still topping in BT13. Like I think Bandai understands the power dynamic of the game and the power balance that they're working with, and they're just slightly shifting the bar a little bit higher. They're not like jumping leaps and bounds to find and attain new heights of stupid. They know some of the limits that they can and can't do. And of course, things are going to break every now and then when they're coming up with new designs. And like some people were saying, oh, well, one of the benefits to rotation is it frees up and opens up design space. But like,
How?
it does and it doesn't. It's just like for a competitive environment, sure, it kind of can. But we see them basically just redo cards already that are slightly weaker than some of the counterparts. Like we just had a BT15 spoiler of the brand new Garurumon.
Yep. Yeah.
Do I honestly think that card is going to replace the promo Garurumon that we got all the way at the beginning of the game? It could, but the fact that the promo Garurumon is still just that good of a card because it has a low play cost, so it's easy to hard play if you're stuck and you need to just get a level 4 out. It still has
Free
the
draw
Garurumon
power.
name, and the draw is not limited to once per turn. That inheritable alone is huge. The draw on the new BT15 Garurumon is once per turn, but you do have that name-based evolution, but instead now you're not hard playing that card if you need to in a pinch because it's more expensive, and it does have some various other effects on it natively, but I still would rather just use that promo because I don't care about all of those extra buffs. I just care about the inheritable ability for when I'm comboing off, and I need all of that card draw, not just one of that card draw.
Yeah, exactly. It makes. I don't know. I don't. I get, some people, they'll like, oh, this is newer, and like, new doesn't always equal better. So it's like,
No, but like, is rotating the promo Garurumon meaning like does that mean that I won't get a card like what we're just seeing with BT15 because the inheritable just ate up all that design space? No. They're still going to do it anyway. Like we've already seen them make the same mistake a couple of times with Digisorption. It's just like here's Argamon, Digisorbs for 0. Like well, technically it's Digizorb -3 to make its Digivolution
yeah,
cost 0. We've seen that with Blossomon in literally the next set, and both cards were so good they got limited to 1. And then they never printed a Digisorption that makes it free ever again.
I wonder why.
And it's not because
But
like, oh, Digisorption, those cards ate up the design space. When cards eat up design space, they just get rid of it. Like there's no need to wait for rotation in order to say, hey, this card was a problem. No, they could just get rid of the card that was the problem, and they've said that.
it's literally the point in the hidden and forbidden list, the banned and forbidden list. or
Ban
limited
and
and forbidden.
yeah, ban and limited, because we still don't have, like, literally outside of Mega Digimon Fusion, we still don't have a second card that is actually banned. Everything has been limited to one. So the reason why, like, I'm okay with things being limited to one, but like, I know a lot of people aren't okay with things being limited to one.
I don't know. I'd rather them just be gone. I'm not gonna lie to you. If I had the choice, I would rather them just be banned, just so that they could design a new version of the card or something of that nature to replace said thing. Hence why we don't have like another level 5 yellow hybrid or something of that nature. I would much rather them just say screw it, ban the card outright. Things like hidden potential discovered need to just be gone.
Well,
Like
the
I don't
funny
know.
thing is, some people are asking for, like, oh, can we have limitations? Like, can this card be limited to two? And I'm just like, do you not understand how, like, math works? Like, I mean, I guess that's not what most people are thinking in the forefront, but like, I've explained this before, and I'll explain it again here, just because some people might not be familiar or remember the topic. But like, there's a reason why you play cards in specific quantities, at least for Digimon. When you play a four of, that means you want to see that card as often as you humanly possibly can. When a card is played out as a three of, you at least want to see that card once per game. When a card is played at a quantity of two, you're okay with seeing it. You're okay with not seeing it. When you're playing a card like that's limited to one, it would be nice to see it, but you're not banking on seeing it. But when you do see it, it's still very impactful and very good. And like, if I were to run Hidden Potential at two, like, that would make green so much more powerful. Granted, I think that's a bad example because I honestly think that card should be banned, but
Yeah,
like,
I think that
running
card should be gone.
the Were Garurumon, that might be a better example. Running the
Yeah, the
promo
level
Were
5.
Garurumon at two, I only need to
Yeah,
see
why
one
would you
of
not
it.
run it?
Yeah,
I think.
I would still run it at two. I would run that card as many copies as I humanly possibly can. And I'd still find it just as consistently at two as four in certain games. Like, it's lowering the consistency, but because I'm getting something very comparable to it with the starter deck, uh, Garurumon, like Were Garurumon, like,
You can
I
just
would be okay.
run as
Yeah.
two fine, and it would not hurt you as bad. It actually would be just fine because then you'd run the 4 of the new one and then 2 of the old one, and then that gives you a little bit more free space to do other stuff. But like I don't understand that logic where they're like, oh, we should just limit things to 2 and then 3. I'm like, no, this isn't Yu-Gi-Oh. It doesn't work that way where we can just add cards from our deck instantly.
No,
And so like there, it makes sense to do things like that. But
I
like
do like the one or none, and I am like you. Some cards probably should actually just be banned. I'm okay with, like, the Digisorptions for zero being limited to one because now there's two
I'm
of them.
fine with them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, because now there's two of them, it's just like, okay, I'll play six on brand level fives, and then I'll just splash in the two Digisorptions because I could only run one of each. It's like, it has its own level of, like, weird consistency in its
yeah.
inconsistency.
Feels sacky, but I mean it's okay. It's fine. I don't like it, but I'm fine with it. There are just some cards that I just think need to be gone so that new things can replace it. But that's a whole separate thing for a whole nother topic.
Yeah, but in terms of, like, if they did ever implement a rotation, I think they would have to pay way more attention to the ban and restriction list, more so than they do now for an eternal format, which is really weird to say because, like, if, like, they ever implement a rotation, not saying they will, I honestly don't think they will because they've only done it for one of their games ever out of the what, handful, more than one that they've ever made. The only game that they made that ever had rotation was Naruto, and that is now a dead TCG.
Yo, I have so many cards for that game just randomly.
But that was the only time they ever had rotation, and that was the only card game that they ever made. Like, right now, Dragon Ball Super, uh, it doesn't have rotation. Sure, granted, it's getting a reboot, but that's not a rotation. They're still planning on making cards for that iteration of the game. but that's not like I don't know if rotation would even help them because like that game is more akin to like Yu-Gi-Oh where you do just have your like here's your core, your archetype, and then here's just a handful of staples for your designated color. And Digimon could easily go into that direction, but right now I actually like the more heavier archetype stuff. Granted, I do wish there was a little bit more freedom, but I'm not like objectifying against the heavier into the archetypes. As long as they support certain archetypes, and not just put all of the attention onto one, like what we're seeing with Greymon. Like, I think Bloomlord is in a pretty good spot. He's consistently had some small updates in every single set, all the way up to BT15. BT15 seems like the set he's actually... No, he potentially could get some stuff in BT15.
I was about to say,
Because of
yeah, he
Puppet Mon.
is. Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, I mean, granted, he's not going to use the new Cherrymon or anything because that's working with the Dark
Yeah, specifically
Masters.
the Dark Masters.
Yeah, but, like, there's still room for him to just randomly get a card that he could look at and use. And that's kind of where, like, options and tamers kind of are, where it's just like, yeah, I could just work in niche situations for the deck. Yeah, like BT15 Woodmon. Like,
Yeah,
it's
I
crazy
like that
how
card a lot.
much support. Like, okay, so I'm gonna redefine this, and I'm gonna say like I don't necessarily like name-based archetypes. I like trait-based archetypes way more because it opens the doors for more possibilities. So I think like Bloomlord and Machingermon and Dorbikmon, that's like a good direction for decks to go into. I'm not saying they have to be built exactly like those, but like just the fact that like any vegetation plant or fairy means that you could look at that for Bloomlord. Any cyborg or level 6 machine means you could look at that for Machingermon. Any dinosaur or dragon, you could look at that for Dorbikmon to increase the potential of those decks. Versus, oh, we're going to have the 15th Greymon, and Greymon is still going to be relevant because it has the name Greymon in it, so that's great.
The only thing I don't like about that, or I should say, the fear would be unintended, like things that make them very strong. Like randomly a piece comes out for Machingermon that out of nowhere makes it absolutely bonkers. That wasn't necessarily intended for Machingermon, but because it can use the trait of Machine or Cyborg, it works. Things like that, where I would feel like they have to be more careful if they were doing things like trait based.
Oh, 100%. Like, that could lead to more bans and limitations because of that. I'm not just saying that. I'm just saying, in terms of, like, from a deck building perspective, that's the shift that more
It's
people
probably more
want.
fun,
Yeah.
definitely.
That's the shift that more people would want, is to look at things with inside of the trait, inside of the package, and be able to pick and choose what they want. And that's where Greymon is versus everything else when it comes to name-based. It's like, oh, here's my Gao deck. I play the Gao cards. Are there any other good Gao cards that I have access to? No, I have 3
No.
evolution lines to look at. Cool. Deck built itself. Let me clap my hands on the deck building itself. And the fact that I still see a lot of people like, oh, I need help with my deck. I wonder what's wrong with it. And they just have a hodgepodge pile of cards. It's like, no wonder why. Like, Bandai made deck building as easy as they humanly possibly can to lower the barrier of entry. And, like, not only that, but the price of the cards, if you were to buy the singles, are already ridiculously low. Because I was talking at locals with, not Digimon, Pokemon player. And I was just like, yeah, so what, I know you're kind of interested. You're always looking at us playing. And he's just like, well, is there anything that, like, does this? And I'm just like, oh, yeah, Gao does that. And he's just like, oh, really? What's, like, the most expensive card in the deck? And I pull out the super rare from BT11. I'm like, this is a $6 card. You need 4 of it. Everything else is less than $1.
Yeah, literally. Like, it doesn't even get any more, like, crazy. Like,
Yeah.
than that. So, I like I said, I understand. You know, some people, they want to be unique, so they'll do things like oh, I don't want to run a conventional deck. I want to run something that has a. But then the deck doesn't, or I should say, the game isn't very conducive of that mindset because of the archetypes and things like that, or name-based synergies. So it sucks. There are some, unintended things that work just fine, and you can get away with it. But for the most part, you kind of just can't. Kind of just follow for the example that we're using, the Galamon stuff. It's all there. Literally, your whole deck is built. There really doesn't need to be much. The only thing you're maybe really thinking about is ratios here and there, and then maybe option cards here and there. But like for the most part, you're not really doing that much thought. Aside from your little micro decisions here and there.
And I think like what they're doing with Gamamon, where because of his name, he actually has different avenues to be able to potentially have different builds of him. And I think that's kind of cool. And Leomon also seems to be in that type of direction because Leomon's colors are just all over the place, especially since like he's trying to care more about the Leomon name a little bit more. Because it's like we have Leomon in what? He originally started in blue, then he transitioned to green, then he transitioned to blue-green, now he is in yellow, then we have a green-black line and a green-yellow line. Like, Leomon's just all over the place, so there is that potential to be able to have, like, some weird cross-support between all of the different colors, to just have, like, a hodgepodge deck that doesn't seem like it would work, but still kind of does. And Gamamon is definitely in a way better position to be able to do that than any of the others. But that's kind of like the interesting flexibility on like there on name-based synergies is because sometimes you could just ignore colors, which is both like a good thing and a bad thing. It just depends on what's being used, and that's kind of why I was thinking of like maybe just transitioning everything to be more trait based. That would be kind of cool, and it seems like they're attempting that right now, stepping maybe a tiny bit away from name based and going more into trait based with BT14 and Block 3. But who knows? Right now we're stuck in name based lands, and names do matter, and names rule everything, and names just make deck building easier. What do I need for my Gamamon deck? Gamamon named cards. Boom,
Like
done.
cards that list Gamamon in its text. Boom, your deck is essentially built. And I understand that's probably boring to some people, and I don't mind it too much because one, it does make deck building easier, which some people don't like. I'm not. I'm not a hater of it. I don't hate it, but I don't love it.
Some people
But
still struggle with deck building though, which is like it's interesting because they do try to make it as easy, but
there are some decks that like don't have that same luxury. Like, for example, Balthamon. Balthamon has like a solid like 20 cards that you don't have like that are just purely you just have to make up. Like you're just like, okay, what do I want to use? Yes, it kind of is shoehorned that you kind of want to mill, so you want to have a bunch of cards that are milling, so that you're drawing and throwing stuff to trash. So you kind of are shoehorned to doing some stuff, but it does have a lot of flexibility. But there are plenty of decks, or there are some decks that don't follow that same logic because of their weirdness. Like the only like I just think the biggest one is definitely Balthamon, just because there's like a solid 20 something cards that you just are completely up to you. Like you just use whatever you want. Because
I
you're
mean,
just using the Gizus. The only ones that are like guaranteed are the Gizus. That's 4, 8, 12. Balthamon and both Balthamons. That's 20. And then Astamon. That's 24. So 24 cards, and then the rest of it is, and then I guess you need the
Tamer.
Karada.
Yeah.
Karada, which is a 3 to 4 of, you can, depending on what you want. So 20 to 28, that's still 22 cards, where there's just completely up to you what you can do with. Like over half the deck is just you can make up and do whatever you want with.
Well,
Uh,
that's the difference between a deck that's functioning more so on mechanics rather than an actual archetype, which I think is what people ultimately wanted out of Digimon, and what it seemed like they were trying to do at the very beginning was a more mechanics centered game, which again has its own sets of like freedom on what you could potentially do inside of what the mechanic is allowing you to do. I think purple, just a lot of purple is more mechanics based because literally it cares about the trash. And then how are you filling up the trash? Well, I could discard cards, I could self-mill cards, or I could take what's on the field and throw it away. Like those are the three realistic ways that you're filling up your trash, and usually there's a lot of cross synergy where it's just like it's an on delete, draw 3, discard 2. So now it's fulfilling the I want to put cards from my field into the trash on top of making me discard to fill up my trash even more. So there's like those cross synergies in terms of the mechanics that a deck is working with in order to be able to be creative and find success. Versus something like Red Hybrids, where Red Hybrids, your deck is 99% built for you. You just use the Red Hybrid cards, and you realistically have 4 cards off from like each other's Red Hybrid list in terms of like flexibility and tech space that you have to work with. Because like certain things do get optimized really really quickly, and I think part of the problem on some people's like deck building capabilities is they just don't, they're either A, lazy, or B, just don't have access at the resources to find that information themselves. Granted, Google's a thing, and there's plenty of various resources that are literally handed to them for free by the community because there's Eggman's website, tons of YouTube channels, tons of resources and websites like CG Guides and Digimon Meta, on top of like a whole bunch of just uh, databases. That's the word I was looking for. But yeah, so like I think if the game is able to figure out how to transition to traits and mechanics, I think maybe deck building could be more interesting. And as a result, maybe with when it comes to the waterfall meta, we can figure out ways for decks to be relevant longer based on just how they're going to be like supporting them. So we had a deck in EX2. It was called D Reapers. D Reapers was basically a combo deck. It just did its thing, tried to stall the opponent, waited long enough, and then it just auto wins the game at a certain point. Royal Knights basically took up that same mantle, but Royal Knights
More
has more.
proactive.
Yes, Royal Knights is a little bit more proactive. Actually, no, I would say Royal Knights is way more reactive. The other one is way more proactive, but the level of support that Royal Knights gets, because Royal Knights is a more widely used trait than D Reapers, gives it more opportunity to be able to do different things versus something like D Reaper where it doesn't really have that opportunity. And I think like with EX5, what they're trying to do with Sovereigns is definitely in that same vein. And then they tried to do it again with 4 Great Dragons in EX3. So like they're attempting to do it, and as we've seen, when they do something and fail multiple times, like the DNA based decks, sometimes they'll have a success and hit a home run and have it be exactly what it wanted or needed to be.
Interesting. Yeah, I wish Four Great Dragons was better. I know it is getting more support, but I still don't think it's good.
Well, I mean that I don't even know if they would use that Azulong, to be honest, but
Oh no, they're getting a new what's his face? Goldramon. That like he summons the
oh, the tokens.
yeah, he summons the red and the blue and then that's cool. It looks
Yeah, but
cool.
is
I
is
just don't
Four
think it's
Great
good.
Dragons really gonna use that though? I mean, they could because he is a 4 Great Dragon. So
Yeah.
that's the interesting prospect, is being able to look at stuff that are using more wider nets, I guess. Because name-based stuff, the net is so narrow unless they hardcore support it so much that you have just a plethora of tools. Like if you try to ban something from like Red Black Greymon right now, It's like almost borderline impossible because they pretty much have a substitute ready and waiting because of how much that archetype has been supported.
Yeah, I don't. I think they just put too much love to Greymon, which, like I said, I understand. It's the flagship boy, but like, there's plenty of other Digimon that are cool, and I think they're starting to branch out a little bit more. But they still keep throwing a dumb Greymon every set, and it's like, just stop. Just
Hey, at least we already know that BT15 won't have a Greymon.
thank the Lord. Now let's go a few sets
I mean,
without a
technically,
Greymon.
BT13 didn't really have a good Greymon based card for them to use because it was mostly
That's
focused
not
around
true.
Shine.
That's still Greymon.
I mean, the deck is just that good, though. That's the other thing. It's like they gave it so much support that the deck is just that good. Even in Japan, it's still the third best deck right now. That's crazy to think that the deck hasn't really gotten a whole lot of updates, and it's still one of the best decks. Period, just because of how much it's supported and what the mechanics of it's trying to do.
I
Although,
mean,
granted, they did give it a couple of bones in
got a
a
starter
starter
deck,
deck
another
and
one.
BT14. But they're
Yeah,
not even
it's
using some of the BT14 stuff, like the BT14 Wargrey. Nah, forget it.
nah. They just use the rookie and the level 4 maybe. That's it. They don't need nothing else. Like everything else is irrelevant.
Yeah,
They
because the
don't
Ace
need.
card's not even that great.
It's okay. It's not good, but it's not awful. You wouldn't use. You don't need it. Is the thing. Like, why would you? You shouldn't be promoting your stack unless you know you're going all the way up. Anyway, so it. I don't know. I just don't like that they're putting so much love onto it, and we just did a few sets. We just need them to go a few sets without touching Greymon name. Greymon
That's
dot
that's
deck.
that's why I'm hoping in Block 3 they are going to be focusing more on traits rather than names. I mean, granted, they're still going to have some name-based cards and still
Of
want that,
course.
but like I think right now we're entering an era with Block 3 is similar to what Dragon Ball has been doing, which is basically I'll just label it as the gimmick era, where now every single new block is going to come with a brand new mechanic that's going to last through the entire block. And they're just going to keep putting new and new things inside of the game to be able to spice it up each year and each set. So this year is going to be, or like block 3 is going to be the ace block. Just like how in Dragon Ball, they had unisons. Like they literally
Mm-hmm.
labeled the whole block. This is the unison block. Now, in Dragon Ball, they had just entered the Zenkai block. So their new mechanic is the Zenkai mechanic, which I'm not even going to attempt to go over. Um, but that's what the trend and pattern that they seem to be going, and it looks like Digimon is following that similar style of vein with Ace being the first foray into it, but we'll see what actually comes of it. I know a lot of people had some problems with Ace and think it's confusing. It's not really that bad. People were looking at it and be like, "Oh, hand traps." It's like, no, it's not that bad. Most of the time, people are actually just hard playing the cards on their turn, rather than digivolving for free. Because leaving the body out to be susceptible to removal is still just a bad idea, unless you can
Yeah,
back it up.
I mean, yeah, if you have like ways to go all the way up, then it doesn't matter. Like you're just using that to get rid of something that maybe your opponent put them in a weird spot. But like more often than not, you're not really doing that. You're not putting the thing out unless you know you're going to be able to go all the way up a chain. So it makes sense.
But I mean, this coincides all the way back to the reprints because right now, based on the Waterfall meta, Block 1 and Block 0 are basically phased out. There's not a whole lot of stuff that's being played outside of a couple of like really good generic cards that are like actually seeing wide use. And even now,
Davis.
I mean, yeah, but even now, they're being used less and less. It's like I'm not using Davis inside of Mirage. Mirage doesn't give two craps about Davis. I'm playing Thomas. That's the card that I want and need to be using because the deck cares about that. So like even some of those like good generic staples are like phasing out or being phased out. Most decks can't even afford to put in floodgates anymore because that would ruin the consistency of their deck. And if they do, now they need to sacrifice option slots, which is partially their defense, or even more consistency, depending on what the option is, in order to fit those floodgates in to try to slow down the opponent and stop them. But like that's the push and pull give and take dynamic of what we're working with here.
Interesting. I don't know.
And that's why like I was partially criticized on my top 10 reprints because I
I
had a lot of
remember.
people saying like these reprints were not needed. We did not need these reprints. And the community, as I mentioned in the video, adamantly fought for those reprints. And now we're saying a completely different story from what 6 months ago when we had that announcement be changed to where we were going to not have reprints, and now you're complaining that we're getting the reprints after fighting so hard to get them. It's like I don't know. There has to be a line, but this is where like rotation just doesn't matter. Like a true rotation just doesn't matter is because like the game based on this superficial waterfall rotation just makes cards irrelevant regardless if they're in standard play or not in standard play.
Interesting. I mean, I get it. I the idea of it sounds fine, but like the practice or the real world application of it wouldn't work. So I don't see where they would be able to make it function in a healthy way.
Yeah. And I know we've been talking a lot about the black icon, and some people might not actually be aware of what it is, but basically next to the name under the set like set number and card number and rarity, there is a little number in a white hexagon um that basically has a number in it. It'll say 1 or 2 as of right now, and then come BT14 it'll say 3. But basically what that means is that is the block/year it was printed in. So cards that don't have that were basically what I like to label as block 0, which was year 1. Then after their first like basically think of it as the year after their anniversary. So cards that were printed with the O2 block number came after the second anniversary of the game. So people were just looking at that, and some people still just don't know what that was or what that means or if there's going to be rotation. As of right now, there is currently no plans for rotation. I really hope that they don't bother implementing rotation because it actually wouldn't mean anything for the game. It would actually probably just make the game worse, and people sometimes, monkey's paw, don't know exactly what they're asking for.
Yeah, I think they just need to leave it be. We'll see. It's one of those things, if it needs to happen, Bandai will make it happen. So I just leave it to Papa Bandai. They'll figure out, they know more often what's better
Well, they
for us.
also know what's down the pipeline and will tell you.
Exactly. So it's like, it's probably better to just leave it to Papa Bandai. And if it needs to be said, then the community can pool together and say what needs to be said, or what needs to be changed and things like that. So I don't foresee this being something that is really that big a deal or needs to be pushed because it just doesn't make sense at the current moment of the game.
Yeah, between everyone asking for rotation and everyone asking for a digital client, those are hopefully two things Bandai already has a grasp on in terms of like how to actually approach it. I think the digital client side of things, just as a little sidetracked, where it takes years for a digital client, Dragon Ball is just getting theirs. And even if they get theirs, who's to say we're going to be next getting ours? Like, there's just a lot that goes into game development as a whole, to where it's just like, can we please, as a community, they already understand, trust me, they understand we want a digital client. It's not going to happen. At least not in like the foreseeable future. 3 years from now is probably a more realistic time frame in which we would potentially get one. And that's 3 years down the time frame, because we have a lot of red tape that they have to go through from the conceptual level all the way down to the programming level and actually building the art assets and programming the game down to final release. Like there's a lot more people just don't get when it comes to game design. I studied this stuff, so I know exactly how hard it is to be able to get something in the works and work on it. And then with rotation, we all just need to stop asking for rotation. It is not helpful. It is not something that's actually going to fix the game. I don't even think the game is in that bad of a state. I think BT13 is a pretty solid meta. Is it the best meta ever? No. Some people might have you believe otherwise, but it is a good meta. It's not the best meta. But I think like between all of the new players coming in, the accessibility of the game, the fact that we don't have rotation, there's just a lot of things going for the game, helping it be as good of an actual game as we could possibly make it. And like collectors aside and finance simulator aside, I'm glad that the game is not just a big cash grab for people like Lorcana is right now.
Okay. I mean, yeah.
I mean, that's what MetaZoo was too when it came out. It was literally an investor trap. There is zero game actually behind it. I'm not saying Lorcana is that same way. I literally walked in. Today was Lorcana Day also at my LGS. There were 3 people playing Lorcana.
Oh, my LGS was crazy, bro. They had a lot of product and they had a lot of people playing. I don't know. I played a game of it. We had a starter deck tournament there. I tried it. I was like, this is just boring. Like, I don't like the art isn't even that great. I don't know. I didn't enjoy my time playing it.
No, I think right now it's probably going to be an investor trap until it actually can prove itself. MetaZoo has definitely not proven itself to actually be a game and is in it 110% strictly for the money. There is no game to it. Don't let people fool you. Nobody's playing it. Nobody cares. And you could already see in their market that the hype has died down. Digimon understands how to make cards
money.
cheap. There is no money in the secondary market, and it's not like from a developer standpoint, they shouldn't even be looking at the secondary market to begin with, because that is very dangerous, acknowledging the secondary market exists, and that's actually, it actually is illegal in the US at the very least, to acknowledge your secondary market, because now you are purposely printing cards for the sake of sales, because you know how much that card costs. Like, oh, Charizard costs $100. I'm going to print another Charizard exactly the same because it costs $100, expecting people to buy it because there is that $100 card in it. Like, that actually is illegal. Usually their defense against that, if they even attempt to, is I'm just printing a popular card that I see a lot of people want. And that's most of the time what Bandai does for basically everything. And the more cards get reprinted, the lower the price generally goes, which makes things easier and more accessible for players. Like, your focus and target audience should not be on collectors. It should be on players.
No, yeah. If it has a collector, there'll always be collectors. That should never be the initial focus.
I mean, they set the market pretty much themselves. Like,
exactly. Like, they'll never. If you're making at least a TCG, collectors should never be your target audience. That only breeds ill will, and people will just they won't support the game. It's not a good idea. I mean, hence why we see MetaZoo. Like, I don't even know what you do in that game. I don't even know, like.
It was so cringe. I watched a Channel Fireball video of them attempting to play it, and you could tell even on their faces when they were making the video that they were not having fun.
Like, I don't know. I just like it just looks weird. And then like going to play like Lorcana, like we had this tournament. There was a lot of people. Like it was like a solid like almost 30 people. Um, and I don't know. I just didn't think anybody. I don't know. I played against. It was a five. It was like six rounds, something like 5 6 rounds, something like that. And we I didn't out of like four of those rounds, nobody looked like they were having fun. I'm like, this just looks. They're just like, yeah, you ink and then you use the ink to pay the cost. You have to use cards from your hand to ink. You ink the card from your hand, and that turns into your energy, and the energy then use energy to cost a. You're ramping up every turn like that, and it's just like it just is boring. Like the terms, I don't like the terms. Um, I don't know. It is a very weird feeling game. I I think it just did not do what it set out to do out the gate.
I think it's
Um,
just using the Disney IPs to try to hype itself up. Cause like when I was looking at it, I was just like, oh, this is just Keyforge, except you build your deck this time. Cool, great. Not
yeah.
saying Keyforge was bad at all, but I'm just saying like
Well,
I've
if
seen
it's
it
just like
before.
that, I'll tell you right now, I don't like it.
Like
If
I'm
it's
I'm just
like
saying
that,
I've seen it before, and it's like whatever to me now. Where Digimon, there is still no card game like Digimon except for
No.
Chrono Clash, which was the predecessor to Digimon, and Chrono Clash is no longer being supported. But
Oh,
that's
well,
what
we
makes
know which one survived and who did.
But that's what
So
makes Digimon so unique, is just exactly how unique it is. Like you've seen like One Piece take inspiration on stuff from Dragon Ball and from One Piece, or not One Piece, and Digimon.
Digimon.
Um, but like Digimon still is its own unique thing for the most part. I think like Bandai still has some learning to do with the game, but they have a solid understanding of the game, and I don't think a rotation will change anything to make it better.
No, I don't think it. I think it brings more hurt than it does good at the current moment. Maybe way later down the line, maybe I could see merit, but even then, I don't foresee that being the case anytime soon.
But I think with BT13 being a pretty long format, this is a good format to be in. I think with the reprint set, even though a lot of people aren't exactly super happy for the reprints, I still think it's going to be a good slight change to the meta. It's going to shake things up with the Jellymon and Gamamon deck being the two most viable brand new stuff to come out of that set. On top of, like, for various different territories, again, it just adds more accessibility because that was the whole point, at least for Japan and the places outside of Japan, was to have widespread accessibility on specific cards and promos and all that stuff. And I liked the mission statement and I liked the idea behind what they're doing. And we'll see if we get another reprint set next year with stuff from Black One, if they're just going to do it that way, or if they're going to do it something different this time based on what they learned. But it's definitely going to be interesting heading all the way into BT14. We got a lot of time in what we got, and we even have some starter decks. I don't know when the demo decks are going to be coming out either, but those are also going to be something to look forward to, because maybe like a
oh
demo
geez,
day
yeah.
because maybe a demo day ran by stores that would help bring even more interest in, because I know certain scenes have kind of like died out and the game has entered, like, from a store play perspective, a consolidation zone based on like all of the different TCGs that just randomly hit the market that no store can reasonably like expect to support everything. Which we talked about that as a different episode called the TCG Bubble. Feel free to listen to that if you want more of an in-depth analysis on that. But I think Digimon is in a pretty good state, and I don't want things to change. At
Oh
least
no,
not
I love it.
like dramatically like rotation, because the game just doesn't need it.
Oh no, I think right now is great. If you wanted to ever get into Digimon, this is the time. There's a lot of decks that can play and actually do well. So I don't see a better time than now to start playing.
Yeah, the waterfall is definitely not moving as fast as it once was. So you could easily pick up like a BT10 or BT11 deck. I'd probably say like anything that was updated with the BT11 era, or BT11 set, which basically is everything in Block 2. Like they are making the game as accessible as they possibly can, and I like that.
Yeah,
Despite the price of the singles that some people are having a hard time with because they want and are expecting money to come out of this game, and that's just not the reality. If you want the money, get those chase secret rares, or win tournaments and sell those prize cards. That's pretty much the only way you're ever gonna make money on Digimon when it comes to being a collector or investor. But I think we're in a good spot, and with that, I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the channel and podcast, feel free to share it with everyone on various social media platforms. Make sure to leave a rating, like, review, subscribe, follow, depending on what platform you're actually listening on. And I want to thank everyone again for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.